Peter Gifford, and this is the Esoteric Order of Gamers. Welcome! I'm doing another review today. Hope you enjoy it. It's all about voices in my head. It's by Unexpected Games and the designer Corey Konietzka. As I mentioned before in my 3000 Scoundrels review, they very kindly sent me the 3 games that they've created so far. This was the second one they released, Voices in My Head, and I was quite excited by this one because I knew nothing about it whatsoever. And I purposely didn't look up anything about it because I wanted to be surprised. And I was. And it's very different and very fun. Oops, spoiler. Always give away the spoilers, don't they? Never mind. You know, I like most of the games that I get. I very rarely get a game I don't like, but I will tell you if there are bits about the game that I don't like. So never fear, they're not biased, these reviews. They are my personal opinion. I play all these games, and if I enjoy them, I'll let you know. If I don't, I'll certainly let you know as well. So let's learn about Voices in My Head. What's it all about? Well, it's a wacky game of internal conflict in the court of law for 3 to 6 players. It is 1 to 2 hours. Yeah, that's about right. Maybe, yeah. And 12 plus. And it's a nice little compact box and it looks fantastic. Let's get into it because here it is. This is a layout. Now, I've set this up for 3 players, but you can have up to 5. So you can have one player who's the prosecutor, and the other players can be what are called the personas. And they're the voices inside this guy's head. And this guy is actually called Guy. He's the guy, I'm going to be saying that a lot, aren't I? He's the guy who's on trial here, and we're going to find out if he's guilty or not. And depending on your persona, you'll want him to be guilty or not, and that's how you'll win. So what do we got here? Well, we've got this main board, and the first thing you'll notice is this spectacular thing in the middle. And this is made up of these little individual trays. Beautifully designed little things. I'm sure they went to a lot of trouble to make these just the right size to make them effective. But they slot into like 3 holes on the board, and then we have this brain piece in the center that rises above the board like that. So already you're thinking, what's going on? This is really different, really exciting. So each one of these areas correspond to a part of Guy's brain. We've got the motor skills, instinct, speech, observation, and planning. And as one of his personas, you're going to be jockeying for influence on each one of these areas in order to influence the jurors who are up here at the top of the board. And the jurors are divided into several types: logical, judgmental, distracted, laid back, impulsive, and perceptive. And depending what counters are placed up here, they'll either end up at the end of the game being innocent or guilty or undecided. And depending on how many of those are innocent or guilty or undecided, you might win the game because you'll have a personal persona card, like so, and that will give you some instructions on the card for how many people you want innocent or guilty, or how many control markers you have left, things like that. I'll show you some of those later, but that basically tells you how you win the game. So at the start of the game, someone has to play the prosecutor, and they're behind this little prosecutor screen here, and they control the cards that come out during the rounds of the trial. Now, there is an option to have an automated prosecutor, and I've played it with that version as well, and it works really, really well. So, you know, you don't have to have one of the players being the prosecutor, but it's a different kind of play experience for them if they do it. So you set up a certain number of these roll cards and the prosecutor card, and depending how many players you have, you'll put in, say, a few of this type and a few of this type. They've got little icons on the bottom that identify them. And you'll set up a little roll card deck which will have a number of rolls in it equal to the number of players in the game. You shuffle these, you hand them out, and someone will end up being the prosecutor, and other people will have one of these rolls, which will show them basically how to win the game. Now, I must point out, you keep your roll cards secret, so other players don't know what your conditions are for winning the game. So you'll end up with one of those, and you'll keep them with you, and nobody else will see them, and nobody else knows what you need to do to win. Now, the prosecutor is going to be controlling the whole thing, so they're going to get some of these trial cards, and they'll shuffle these up and choose one, and it's got a start of trial side and an end of trial side. So they read out the start of trial side, and this will also give a little bit of setup instructions. It might put some guilty or innocent tokens on the jurors and do some other stuff, and it'll also say who the first player is. So they read that out and they keep that there. Now, what do all these components do, I hear you ask? Well, let me just identify them. we have over here the influence tokens. And on these influence tokens, you either have a guilty symbol, an innocent symbol, or a undecided symbol. You've got guilty and innocent tokens over here. These ones are face up, so you always see what they are. Each player chooses a color and gets a deployment stick, which looks like a little sort of character standee, but it's not. It's something that you use to push counters around. It's very exciting. I'll show you in a moment. They also get a number of control markers. Now, these control markers have a number on them, which is important during the game, but they also have icons on them as well, and that's an optional rule. Those icons can give you special abilities when you deploy control markers, if you want to use that option, and it's a lot of fun, so I kind of use that option. You've also got a deck of strategy cards like this. Everybody starts with 2 of these, and these let you do particular things during the game. The Prosecutor has 2 decks of cards. They have a Stage 1 trial deck, which I've put behind the screen here, and I've taken 2 cards and put them out next to it. And they also have a Stage 2 trial deck over here. Now, you'll be playing 4 rounds of the game using the Stage 1 deck, and then you'll put that aside and play the final 4 rounds of the game using the Stage 2 deck. So everybody's got a persona, except for the Prosecutor who's running the game. They've got their Stage 1 trial deck. You've got your control markers, and you've got your mysterious deployment stick. So what do you do during a round? Well, the first thing that happens is that the Prosecutor chooses a trial card for the round. So they choose one of these 3 cards here, either the 2 drawn from the deck or the one on top of the deck. And so they choose the middle one here. They slide it through this little gap in the screen, so only these 2 icons are showing at the other side of the screen. A lovely piece of engineering there. It's really, really nice. And that shows the players which 2 areas are going to be the focus of attention in this particular round. So you can see from the 2 icons on this card that it's instinct and speech. So instinct and speech are going to be the 2 areas. Now you can deploy to any of these areas with your control markers, but the focus of this round is going to be controlling instinct and speech, because if you control any of those areas, you'll get some special advantages, which I'll tell you about later. So starting with the player with the first player marker, players are going to take turns deploying their control markers to areas on the board. And this is the fun bit about the game, which was a real surprise to me because I didn't realize how anything worked until I read this in the rules. And I didn't really see how it worked until I actually tried it out, but it's great fun and quite ingenious. And that is, you get your chosen control marker and you stick it on the mind area, probably close to the area that you want to deploy it. And then you get your deployment stick and you place it vertically next to the control token, and you keep it straight up and you choose a direction that you want to push, and then you just push in that direction, pushing your control marker onto the area. Now, if, for example, you're going in from an angle like this, you push, and then once you hit the bar, you make it go flush with the bar and push it on. It's brilliant. This is so much fun. So suddenly we've got this dexterity element, and you can see later on how this gets more and more fun. So I've deployed a number 2 control token to instinct. So everyone takes a turn. So the next player might get one of theirs. They get their deployment stick and they say, okay, I want to go on to speech because that's one of the other icons on the trial card. So they'll push theirs, very, very simple, onto the platform like so. And then the third player, they might have a go. So they get a token and they stick it here and they think, okay, what I want to do is get it on here, but I want to get this one off here. Now, as there's more tokens on here, this gets trickier, but say there's just 2. If I go in from this angle and I push and I go flush, always getting close to the edge. So you can deploy control markers to these areas, and because they stay there as you build up through different rounds, they can also get pushed off and destroyed. So I'll show you this in action. For example, if I'm playing another one here, I might push it like so, go flush. Oh no, he's still tottering on the edge. He hasn't fallen yet. So a third person might get, or a fourth person might do another one, and oh look, missed. But anyway, if that falls off, that token is destroyed. It goes back to the player face down, showing that they can't use it anymore. Now I should also point out the Prosecutor gets a go as well. And all their markers have 0s on them, so they don't actually get a chance to control areas, but they do get a chance to push other tokens around. So they might get one here and push that on like so, but in this case no effect because the yellow one's still on there. So after everyone has had a go, the prosecutor then takes the trial card and reads out both sides of it. Starting with side 1, it says, for example, the witness points directly at you. That's the man I saw fumbling with a mask outside the bank. And then in this case, there's a question. So it says speech, choose one. So it says speech because what it's asking is who is controlling the speech area. So in this case, I have one marker here. The green player has one marker with a value of 1, so they're controlling that area. It's the person with the highest total value on the platform that becomes the controller of that platform, and this card is directed to. So in this case, the green player is going to get this choice. Choose one. Hey, we had a deal, or stay quiet and plot your revenge. So the green player in this case can say, well, I'll choose, hey, we had a deal. In which case, the prosecutor places one guilty token on any juror. So by controlling these different areas, you become the target of the trial card and usually get some kind of advantage. Remember, you're trying to influence the jurors, either guilty or innocent or undecided, depending on your roll card and your goals for the game. After you've done side 1, you do side 2. Again, there's some more descriptive text. And then here it's the other icon, in this case, instinct. So take all control markers belonging to all players from one region and deploy them one at a time to a different region. So the person who controls instinct, which in this case is green because they have the highest value on their platform, they get to do that action. After both sides of the trial card are done, the card is discarded, the prosecutor draws another card to add to their ones behind the screen, and then finally there's one area here called the planning area, and whoever controls that area gets to draw a strategy card. Now these strategy cards are super handy because they have all kinds of special abilities, and they usually let you do things like add influence tokens to the jurors. Now the influence tokens up here are kept face down. When you draw them, you usually draw a few of them and choose one, but it depends on the card. And they can either have an innocent icon, a guilty icon, or an undecided icon. Now these go face down in the middle of these areas, so you never know with a few of these influence tokens on whether those jurors are going to go innocent or guilty. Because if there's a whole stack of them on there, and say one guilty token there, it looks like the distracted jurors are going to go for guilty, but we don't know what is under there until they're revealed at the end of the game. Finally, the first player marker is passed to the next player clockwise, and you move on to the next round. So as I said, there are 8 rounds to the game, 4 of stage 1 and 4 of stage 2. After those 8 rounds are done, everybody reveals their roles, and then you reveal all the influence tokens on the top of the board here. Now, influence tokens cancel each other out. So for example, if you have a guilty one and an innocent one, they will cancel each other out. The undecided ones are just discarded. If a juror type has multiple guilty and innocent tokens after that's done, well, they're just removed one for one, cancelling each other out until there's one left. And that tells you whether that juror is saying guilty or innocent. Finally, everyone checks their roll cards, and if they've fulfilled the conditions on their card, they win. So multiple players can win in this game. There's not necessarily just one winner. So then, my thoughts on voices in my head. Well, as I probably made clear right at the start of this video, I really enjoyed this game. I think it's a lot of fun, and Unexpected Games definitely live up to the name of their company because I really wasn't expecting this kind of thing. When I took out the little platforms and I set it all up, I thought, ooh, what's going on here? It was instantly interesting. The whole thing is a lot of fun. The dexterity element is endlessly engaging. It's surprising how just pushing little counters onto limited size platforms floating above the board can be so fun. How satisfying it is every time you push off somebody else's counter and they're destroyed. It's a lot of fun, a lot of shouting and amusement if you've got the right players who really get into it. And in fact, the cards are really fun too because they have some very amusing sort of fluff text on them. Because this is all about a guy on trial for committing a robbery, there's all kinds of silly stuff on them. And I think the whole mood strikes a really good kind of goofy balance. Guy himself comes across as a bit of a gormless twit, and everything is very light-hearted, which is great, especially for a game called Voices in My Head, which, let's face it, from a different perspective, could be kind of weird. But in this, it's all fun. It's great. The artwork and production is gorgeous and matches that style of game just perfectly. I especially like how some of the trial cards have questions on them, so the prosecutor can ask a question and get a response from the person who controls that area. And if you have the right people, they will of course respond in a funny voice and make a joke out of the whole thing. We had people going, "I object!" and all this kind of stuff during the game, which was a lot of fun. Of course, that kind of thing is very much enhanced by a larger player count. But I did play with 2 players and it was still a lot of fun. There are rules for an automated prosecutor. They're on the website, but I've put them in my rules and reference sheet. And by the way, I haven't mentioned it yet. I've done a rules and reference sheet. It's available on my website, so go grab it. And with the automated prosecutor, the game still works very well. You have twice as many control tokens, 2 colors of control tokens for each player. So there's plenty of crowding on the different areas, and it works well. And with that, you probably want to add the control token abilities as well, which let you do things like play a token, and if you push off another token, you can deploy it somewhere else, or you can destroy a token somewhere and put it somewhere else. All these little special rules that just make the application of your control tokens just a little bit more interesting. You can only do it, however, with the first control token that you deploy each turn. You can, of course, use those special abilities with games with more players too, so that just ups the complexity level a little bit. The mechanic of putting your hidden influence tokens on each of the jurors makes things a lot of fun, because there are many opportunities to secretly look at those tokens and try and work out which of the jurors are heading towards innocence or heading towards guilty or whatever, and try and influence that. So you do have quite a bit of control over your influence of the different jurors, which makes it fun, especially when you've got secret knowledge that other people don't have. You know, I just realized I was looking at the camera and I realized I hadn't plugged the microphone in. Brilliant! So I hope that audio was okay. I'll try and enhance it as much as possible. Anyway, let's go on with my thoughts. Of course, each of the tokens has their own point value on them, so there's a lot of decision making involved in deciding which one of those tokens you want to place. You've got a limited number of them, and unless you have a special ability that brings back the destroyed ones, if you use those 3 value tokens, they're gone forever. So you've got to be careful. If you put them on too soon, they're going to be pushed off too soon. You can save them up for later. So there's a lovely decision space there as well. The prosecutor doesn't have those values on the tokens. They just get to push other tokens off and basically get in the way of things. But then again, the prosecutor gets to do other things like choose which trial cards are used by looking at the game state and deciding which would be the most advantageous for them. Because the prosecutor, of course, wants Guy to be guilty, so they want more guilty jurors than innocent jurors. And everybody knows that. All in all, everything works together rather beautifully. It's easy to teach. I played this with my partner, and she is not a gamer by any means, but picked up the rules very quickly and really enjoyed the game. It was a great couples game. We had 2 couples playing, and we all enjoyed it. And then, as I said, I played it with 2 as well, and that was still fun. So I think this is an absolute winner, and as I said, unexpected, which is great. It's really nice to see something different. I also appreciate this very compact little box, because we're all running out of space, and so many games have huge boxes these days. And despite the fact there's quite a lot packed in the box, they've still managed to put it in a small one, which is great. Lovely, bright artwork, colourful. It's just an attractive game all round. So folks, that's it. Voices in my head. As I mentioned, go to my website because I've done a rules and reference for this game. Thank you very much, Unexpected Games, for sending me this. I've got one more of theirs to cover, which was their first release, The Initiative. So that'll be coming up next. It'll have a small rules and reference with it as well, though there are things to discover as you play in that game because it's kind of a campaign game. Anyway, we'll get into that next time. Thanks for watching. Please hit subscribe and all notifications if you haven't already. Check out my social media channels and my Patreon page if you want to support the Esoteric Order of Gamers, which would be highly appreciated. I'll see you next time. Good gaming. Bye.